My crewman and I were flying a combat reconnaissance mission from the decks of the aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk, flying an airplane called the Vigilante, an RA-5C, fairly sophisticated, twice the speed of sound reconnaissance airplane, much like the F-14 Tomcat that we all saw Tom Cruise bopping around in the movie Top Gun. You saw Top Gun, right? That was me. I called to my crewman who sat behind me. I called him on the intercom, eject, eject, eject. But I didn't hear him go. So I reached up and pulled the face curtain on my own ejection seat, which automatically ejects him first, ready or not, and myself a split second later. By this time, because the engines are working fine, we had continued to accelerate to a speed of about 680 miles an hour. 680. Can you imagine bombing down the nearest interstate freeway close to home there in your convertible with the top down at 680? And, you know, just stand up in the front seat. A heavy wooden door slammed behind me, and a big iron bolt clanked home in the lock outside with a note of finality. And I couldn't believe this was happening to me. I came back and recognized that probably the very key to my survival, all those years in prison, and for most of my friends there as well, would serve me just as well as a key to survival right here at home on a daily basis for the rest of my life. And that key was simply faith. Faith. How about America? A-M-E-R-I-C-A.
In this tape, you'll see why nearly 150 corporate and association meeting planners in a poll taken by Successful Meetings magazine selected Captain Gerald Coffey as one of America's top 10 speakers. James Bannister of the National Association for Bank Services says, "As a professional meeting planner, I have heard hundreds of canned speeches given by self-professed experts. No one can challenge Captain Coffey's credibility. A typical mouth for hire, he's not. He received the highest grade ever given to one of our guest speakers."
The cell in which I found myself was about this wide, 6.5 feet long. Along one wall was a concrete slab that jutted out about 20 inches, my bed, at the foot of which a set of ankle stocks, wooden on the bottom, heavy iron manacle that came down across the top and locked in place with a big rusty padlock. One tiny window very high on the back wall with a double row of iron bars, through which all I could see were the shards of filthy broken glass embedded in the concrete on top of the 16-foot wall that surrounded the entire city block-sized prison. Barbed wire stretched on top of that, of course. Small tin bucket in one corner of the cell. No lid. It's supposed to take care of all my physical requirements. And I'll tell you, that old cell just reeked of the human misery that had been there before me. And if I could have possibly somehow known at the very beginning that I was going to be there for more than 7 years, I don't know what I would have done. But I began to realize and accept the fact that this might be my life for a while, whether I like it or not. And I better try to get my feet on the deck and my stuff together and get on with it and start making the most of it. And gradually the nature of my prayers began to change. And I quit saying, "Why me, God?" And I started saying, "Show me, God. Show me what I'm supposed to do with this. Help me to use this time productively so that it isn't just some kind of a void or a vacuum in my life." And after that realization and commitment, every day took on a new meaning. Because there was purpose. My program isn't about Vietnam. It's about human survival, survival of the human spirit. I use the lessons I learned in Vietnam, as well as my own life lessons since then, as metaphors that people can use in their daily lives to solve their own problems. I cite faith as a key to my survival. Faith in myself, faith in one another, faith in our country, and faith in God. And I illustrate how those four aspects of faith can be used by each of us as business people, as professionals, as parents, and as partners.
Norm Schellinger writes, "Our sales force is one of the new generation, and Vietnam is far from their minds, yet your message had a big impact on them." Mike Wilstead of AMSCO International says, "Captain Coffey's message of faith in self, associates, country, and God couldn't have been more timely for our group. Many shared that his comments not only made an impact on them, but in fact will change their lives.
Let me share with you briefly how each aspect of faith worked for us there in that prison environment, have continued to work for me since I've returned home. But honestly, better than that can work for any of us. And look, I know that many of you in this audience right here today could just as well be standing up here saying the same things I'm saying. Maybe better. You who have overcome your own personal tragedies and professional setbacks, and not just survived them, but gone beyond surviving them, to emerge from them better and tougher and more capable than you might have otherwise been. You know there is inspiration at our elbows every day of our lives. There are heroes among us, not the least of which, of course, is the hero within each of us.
In Faith in Ourselves, I focus on each individual's capacity to build upon the hard times and to even embrace those sometimes cataclysmic changes that affect all of us. I think these are really important issues in corporate America today.
Ross Bailey of the U.S. Postal Service writes, "Our group has experienced major changes. After Captain Coffey's message of surviving change and difficult situations, our people left ready to face the challenges, willing to accept these changes, and become proactive in making them succeed.
Faith in ourselves to bounce back every time we find ourselves down and hurting and frustrated and scared, to gut it out and hack it and be as tough as we could in the pursuit of that duty. Staying awake and alive intellectually. Almost every man early on in the experience went back into his own life to the very earliest memory he could possibly conjure up, and starting there, go back and relive your entire life in minute detail. When is the last time that you had an opportunity? Think about this. Take one day. No radio, no TV, no telephones, no fax machines, no meeting, no memos, no Little League shuttles. And just think about yourself and how you got to where you are. I mean, keeping faith in ourselves on a daily basis is simply look around us, starting in our families, our businesses, our communities, to recognize the things that are wrong or fouled up and to really believe, hey, I can step in here. I can change that. I can make that wrong thing right. Get it going in the right direction for starters, because we certainly can with that kind of faith. Faith in ourselves to cope with this incredible pace of change. The kind of change that Steve Bauer talks about when he talks about going to the 3rd chapter. To be so well prepared for that change, to have so much faith in ourselves to cope with that change that we don't just survive it, we embrace it. Because we're better prepared than our competitors. That kind of faith in ourselves. The kind of faith in herself that May had to have as a youngster to finally make her dream to the stars. The kind of faith in ourselves whereby we can exercise our leadership, to make some heroic decisions, not only for our schools and our communities and our families, but for our industry as well. Listening to that heroic voice inside, keeping faith in ourselves to make differences around us.
In Faith in One Another, I talk about really being there for each other, supporting one another with clear and honest communication, something frequently missing in our high-tech offices today. I illustrate how we together can overcome our challenges with truly creative partnerships and teamwork.
Rick Craig of the America First Credit Union writes, he integrates his own experiences with managerial concepts such as team building, principles of leadership, and goal achievement.
Our motto there in the prison system was really very simple. Unity over self. Unity over self. And of course the communists realized very early on that there is indeed strength in unity and togetherness, and that's why they kept us separate, isolated, solitary confinement, for as long as they had the facilities to do it. If you're caught communicating with another American POW, you're punished severely. We did it anyway, covertly, secretly. We became compulsive communicators. Sort of became the symbol of our collective strength and resistance. And the way that we did it really illustrates how you can overcome difficulties and obstacles with originality and innovation and creativity. I'd like to share with you briefly how I did that communicating. We used a little system called tap code, by tapping on the walls from cell to cell, sometimes cell block to cell block. Now, tap code was based upon 25 letters of our alphabet. We throw away letter K because we can use a C interchangeably. It makes the same sound enough at the time. We arrange those remaining 25 letters in 5 rows of 5 letters each.